Hey guys, so many of you ask, how exactly do I get these hilt components for side swords? A lot of these are actually just broken blades that I have over years of really loving and using side swords. And so if you have a broken blade, many times if your blade is actually going to be some sort of nut construction, you can just take it right off and you can reuse the parts. Once again, swords are just tools. They're very fancy tools. Yes, people romanticize about them, but at the end of the day, swords are just tools. Okay, so in any case, if you can reuse parts, please do that. Now, what's gonna happen is that many swords, instead of like these nut construction, where it's just you can actually take the unscrew the nut, everything slides out. There are historical swords that actually have this constructions, but there are many swords that are called peened. Peen is what happens that you leave a little piece of metal sticking out at the end, and then someone take a hammer and they hammer the crap of it until it mushroom out, and so your sword is locked in place. But what it means is that you can't just unscrew it and take it off. You have to usually take off that mushroom peen before you slide all the pieces out. So what's happening today is that I actually just got a new box of side swords. Thank you, Phil. So this one is actually sent to me by Phil Swift from Hema Shop Canada. He is local to us, the Canadians, and he has an excellent service. I really like buying from him. And the thing is that he's such a cool guy. He is a very good, well, person in general, and he's just doing good things for the Hema community in Canada. Now, I am not sponsored by him, and yes, we are friends, of course. Dang it, it's kind of hard not to be friends when you're dealing with Phil Swift. He's just everyone's friend. But in any case, so what I asked him is that, do you still have the Blackfencer Velox, Velox, whatever you want to call it. But in any case, and he had one, and it came to about almost $500. So I'm like, ooh, that's dicey. And so after a while, I asked him again, like, hey, do you still have the Velox, or maybe you have any other size or trainer? And he said yes, after over extensive use, finding absolutely everything that he has on the market, a Velox is available, but in a slightly different state than what you think. And here he is. His tip is broken. And here is the Blackfencer Velox or Velox. Watch, I've been saying it wrong the whole time. And as the start of the video as mentioned, this one has a peen construction. If we can see that the mushroom is completely flat, mushroomed in, and there are no sword block that's going to be receiving these peens. So sword block, what it is that aside from just a pommel, at the end there's a little extra piece of cap metal, and then the tang will stick through that and it peens over the sword block. What it does is that when you're trying to grind that peen off, you're not going to damage your pommel. You're going to be damaging maybe a little bit off that sword block, but that's exactly the intent, is to protect your pommel and to make it look a little bit nicer. Because you know, when you're whacking with a hammer, sometimes you could actually miss and hit the pommel, but instead now you're hitting the sword block. Okay, wow, damn, new side sword. Any case, so the Valks right here, it's I've never actually dealt with a Blackfencer steel series before yet, and it's still pretty new to me. So what happens, I was talking to Phil and he was like, yeah, I have one in, it's unfortunately broken at this point, and he is using it as an indoor trainer. Well, then I proposed to him, and of course I showed him what I did with the size, convenience size for number 2, and I told him that, well, why can't I give him a new life? And so that's what we're here about to do. And as you can see from my last video, we are going to be doing a bit of sword DIY. And it's just what I do. I am the club slipper. The sword slipper, once again, is someone who puts swords back together and just kind of give it a new life, you know? Somebody gonna do the dirty work. Kids gonna go break their swords, and that's gonna help to fix it, okay? That's what it is. Alrighty, so in terms of condition, if you are going to be receiving a broken blade, first thing you want to look at is, does the guard and the blade, are they actually welded in one place? If they are welded, I have seen a weird, it's just really spot welding, to be honest. The blade and the actual handle here, sometimes I've seen them welding it together. It's really rare. If that's the case, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time. The Velox here has a really beautiful receiving end to it. I don't think it's actually welded. It's just really seamlessly done. If you can look at that, look at how seamless that is. That's just like going right down and smooth. This is probably one of the most beautiful way to receive the blade into the handle that I've ever seen. This is actually quite impressive. I'm actually very impressed by this. I've never seen this, and of course, the result is that when you put it on your finger, it is tremendously comfortable. And of course, it has a beautiful short ricasso. I always love these ricasso where the blade actually goes in first, and that forms the ricasso. Ricasso is a little part right here that your fingers go into. These are often a lot more thinner than the blade itself. Main reason is because if your ricasso is that thick, then when you put your finger over, then instead of your finger being very intimate, close to your hand, it's somewhere out here, and that's very uncomfortable, right? So historical evidence that they have them shaved down to have a more comfier, well, hand holding handle. And the next thing you want to look at is the handle. Are they rattly, or how are they going to be put together? So if you can see any remnants of glue on there, chances are your handle is going to be epoxied in. If it's going to be epoxy in, it's not just as easy as sliding it out after you take the pin off. It's not as easy as you whacking it out, because epoxy, what it does, it actually melts a lot of the material together and it forms one solid piece. And if that was the case, your handle is probably sacrificial at this point. You would have to chisel along one back of the spine and just wedge it open and just pry that thing out. Another method you could do is that if the handle, or you can somehow heat the tank itself, if you heat up the tank, now what you can do is that we use an induction coil. It's a little device that actually sends electricity past a wire, a positive negative wire, and the wire, it actually forms a little loop. And so what happens is that whatever that loop actually goes, the loop will actually of course goes in, whatever happening inside that loop will create a little magnetic field, and during that magnetic field it's going to heat up the metal on the inside. You can definitely do that if you can. For funsies, if I do, I might actually try that, well, for funsies, and then we'll see how that goes, okay? Is it gonna work? I don't know. Never tried it, I'll see. But in theory, if you can heat up the metal, it heats up the bonding of the epoxy, and you can technically slide it out, apparently. That's what my smith did for me before, in my local metal shop, but I don't know how he did it. He just like, he heat the metal up. We'll see. Okay, next is of course the pommel. Now pommel-wise, we want to make sure that they are, if they're peen, you can actually see some evidence that they're peen, and then there's a little seam underneath on the bottom. Ideally, if I grind it out, this should come off. Once again, we have to remember, even if we grind this off, this might be epoxied in. If the whole thing is epoxied in, we have no choice but to heat this into a really crazy high temperature before we can really slide everything out. But if you're going to sacrifice your pommel, what you can also do is that hope for the best. I'm sure there's some chemical that cleans epoxy at this point. I just haven't figured that out yet. You take out this peen, you take out the handle, and you're gonna find where that joints can be. And if you're very lucky, you can kind of clean it up, grind it, and you can whack the crap of it until this comes off, and the hand and the hilt component should fall just fine. Okay, so that leaves us to the blade. This is still a really good blade, stiff. It's obviously it's gonna be stiff as hell, and as per usual fashion, every single blade that I've ever encountered, meaning that I've ever broke, and my friends, they always break here, and then it always go on an angle. It's either going down, upward, or going downward, but they always result in a very acute point or a very obtuse point. It's because the force being traveled hitting on a true edge. Now, this is by and large where the 1/3 of the blade is, meaning that this was close to the blade's original point of repercussion. And if you're questioning about what the repercussion is, if you take every single sword, okay, if you just take a sword and you whack it anywhere that you please, you're gonna see that this point right here, it doesn't vibrate, and everything else will vibrate, okay? So it's hard to see on camera, but everything vibrates except this point. So this point is the point where your sword actually deliver the most force. So when you're trying to hit someone, you want to hit someone at this force because you're going to deliver maximum force to cut your opponent. I suppose that's as scientific as I can get, okay? And if we look at the Velox and the original one, this and my side sword from Darkwood Armory, the blades from Darkwood, okay? And this is pretty much where the point of repercussion is gonna be. So it's an indication that this happened when it hits some sort of a heavier object. This took a really hard hit. Usually it's because there was a dent right there to begin with. There's a chip or there's a weakness to it, right? It hits that point of contact and the forces kind of rip the rest of the blade out, resulting in this little point. If you have a blade like this, what you can do is that you can actually just, I'm gonna use a Sharpie as example and just draw it in, okay? So what you can do is that you can actually round that out. Let me just Sharpie on my side. It's a terrible Sharpie work, but that's okay. So you can actually round that out to what I call a quarter kind of round. When you do a quarter kind of round, it's that it kind of becomes a little bit safer to use. And if you have a broken blade, just round that tip, you can use it as a really nice paring dagger. Or if it breaks a little bit higher, and it breaks to the point where you have a good 30-inch of blade. This one's only 24, by the way, roughly. If you have 30-inch of blade, at least you can use it as a short sword. But if not, what you can do is that you can actually round that off, take the blade off, put it in another hilt, maybe a left-handed hilt, or it's going to be like a symmetrical hilt, such as this dagger hilt right here. And of course, this dagger hilt is from Deltin. But if you put it into a symmetrical hilt, then imagine this blade into a symmetrical hilt, then what happens is that now you have a really good paring dagger on your left hand. So don't throw away the blade. It's very, very useful. Aside from that, what you can do with a broken blade, you can actually stick it inside a metal gauntlet. Yes, it sounds weird, but if you stick enough blade into a metal gauntlet, what you have is going to be a lantern shield. Really cool thing, eh? So every single part of the sword could easily be salvaged, and do not throw them away. And if you have no idea what to do with it, let me know and sell it to me. I can probably give it a new life as well. Okay, so today just a quick little video about well, I guess unboxing video of the Blackfencer Velox. If this was the original sword, I would be tremendously impressed just holding on. It's just so nice. I kind of want the original now. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic side sword. It's just the handle is at the exact perfect place where the back of your palm is. The hand, there's no hot spot. The recoil is narrow, so your hand fits right in. And my thumb, I can put it right at the back of the recoil, so I can have really good control. This would have been well, that is still a really good side sword, to be honest. But of course, in its original true form, I would not be surprised if the Blackfencer Velox was actually a tremendously formidable side sword that if I have one, I might actually add it to my main arsenal. So in that case, in the next video, we're going to be talking about how we're going to be grinding this out, taking everything apart, and I'm going to try to fit this into one of a small feather blade by Castillo. So then it's just my go-to kind of blade right now that I'm using for every one of these. It's just really easy to get, and they're quite nice, okay? After a while, maybe a couple months, I am going to swap over to the Armor Class Manitoba blade, because after waiting for almost 14 months, Ian from Armor Class is finally like, I'm making your order now. How long is it going to take? I have no idea. So anyways, alright, signing off for now. If you guys have any question about sword slipping, or if you guys want to actually find a way to preserve your sword, or if you don't know what to do with your sword because you're thinking about its aftercare for the sword. Aftercare just means when it dies. Let me know. Put it in the comment section. You can easily find me as Kinkless Yanabe on Facebook. You can find me as the Wampons Armory on Instagram. And of course, you can find me on here on YouTube. Just put it in the comment section, and if you have any question, I am more than happy to ask. Answer if you ask. Okay, signing off for now. See ya.